What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm also going to break down what's going on with the economic calendar moving forward, talk about other factors out there, what you should be watching for as time progresses. But just note that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Webull link. If you deposit any amounts of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 in total. And deposit $2,000 or more, and you're guaranteed 40. The offer ends very soon in just 7 days. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So I just want to say that we got a very, very nice push on the SPY chart this morning. We actually approached my target of the 580 area. I called 580 yesterday, and that's because Tesla is the big one that's leading the way, and the market was trying to rebound yesterday. Now, Tesla's looking very bullish. It looks like it could continue to push as we're in the mid 240s. I called out 244 as our next target. If 240 were to break, that's where Tesla is, and there's no sign of this stopping so far. So Tesla had very, very strong earnings. They beat on EPS and revenue. They gave us some very, very good projections for what we're looking for volume production going into next year. We're looking for 20 to 30% growth according to Elon Musk for volume growth. And then don't forget their margins were better than expected. Their EPS was better than expected, but the revenue was a little bit of a miss. But that's okay because Q4 is projected to be strong, and so is 2025. They also gave us good updates about the Cybercab and all these other cool stuff, like the Cybertruck being profitable, and the list goes on. So very, very awesome stuff by Tesla. That's why the share price is still running, and this is giving the market the momentum it needs. Now, please note something very important about the markets, guys. I just wanted to say that for today, it is Thursday, October 24th, 2024. Don't forget that for today, we just got initial jobless claims. That was a little bit below expectations, which is showing, I guess, technically a little bit more strength in the labor market, at least on paper. But there is a big but. At 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the S&P Global Composite PMI report coming out, the S&P Global Manufacturing PMI, and the Services PMI all coming out. So we'll see if this leads to some high volatility or not. So be very, very careful with this and the way that this is developing. So let's see what happens 15 minutes after market open once the data is out. Does it cause the market to dip a little bit to fill its gap below, or does the market continue to push? That depends on the levels that we are at, which I'll talk about in just a minute. For earnings, don't forget Tesla did very, very well. Tesla's what's leading the market up, at least to start things off. So we got the push that I was talking about already in the markets, but whether or not it continues depends on the data that's coming out at 9:45. Also, we had American Airlines, UPS, and then Southwest announcing earnings. Just to be very blunt, American Airlines did not do that well, even though they beat on EPS and revenue, which was awesome. Unfortunately, their fourth quarter is basically telling us that their unit revenue may drop a little bit compared to last year. And that's not the best, at least for them. That's why the share price is kind of flat right now. Not the strongest of guidances. However, UPS is now telling us that they beat profit expectations, and now the shares are going up because of rebounding volumes, not to mention more profit projections. Excuse me. So they beat on EPS and revenue, but what was really good for them is the fact that their guidance was quite strong. That's the reason why we saw a lot of excitement and a lot of upside by the shareholders. Besides that, the headlines are talking about how the market dipped yesterday, but now it's getting bought back up. As far as Tesla goes, we're projecting 20 to 30% growth going into next year. And then there are strikes that have been extended, at least thus far, for Boeing. The machinists are going on strike. And that's pretty much it. We have the election coming up and a lot of other things, but that's all I'm going to be focused on for now. So for Tesla, great growth, good projections, as long as we don't lose 240. So if 240 were to fail us, I'd be looking for this support at 236 around that area. And as long as we're above 244, I am favoring a push closer to 248, then eventually up to the 250 area. So Tesla remains bullish right now. It's like a giant train that has so much momentum that still wants to continue to go. So there's no sign of Tesla stopping. It remains more bullish for now. As far as SPY goes, we're just kind of trading sideways right here. We have resistance at 581.3. Our support's currently around this 579 area. If we lose 579.5, this is going to be dumping all the way down to fill this gap towards the 578 area. If we break 581.35, we're looking for a bigger push up to this imbalance, taking us up to the 582.5 zone. So break 581, we're bullish. Lose 579.5, we could turn a little bit more bearish. Whether or not we break in which direction depends on this data release. So please keep that in mind. It depends on the data. at 9:45 a.m. as we have the PMI reports. So we'll see, does that cause the market to dip a little bit to fill this gap and then bounce, or do we just keep on pumping from here? It does look like the market wants to continue to pump, but we'll see what the move is. Do we dip first to fill the gap and then we get the big bounce, or do we just bounce from here and keep going? That depends. Break this green line, the 20 EMA, and we're just going to keep going. Lose the yellow one, we're going to get that little dip first before we attempt to bounce again. So it's going to be one of those two. I want to make that very clear. Whichever line we break will help determine which way this market's going to go first before we see a big bounce. For ES, the same thing is going on. We hit this resistance at 58.69. If we break 58.69, we're looking for 58.80. And if we reject here, we're looking for a dip back down to the 58.40 area. So do we get an initial dip after the data comes out before we start to break out higher? Or do we just continue to push from here? Once again, it all depends on this data, what kind of reaction we get. So just be very, very patient with that. We're up a bit thanks to Tesla and the other stocks out there, but just be kind of patient. As far as Nvidia goes, we're trying to hold 140 very, very nicely. We have our support at around that very, very key level. Do we dip to 140? If we lose 140, we're looking for basically 138, by the way. Or do we bounce off 140 and start pushing back up to this imbalance towards 142.6? My gut tells me there might be a small dip and a bounce all the way up to the 142.5 area. So there's a good chance we try to rebound on Nvidia. For Bitcoin, we're trying to rebound right here as long as we don't lose 67,100. We're favoring a push for 67,500. I see there's more upside potential, so we're doing a very, very good job so far. For NQ, we basically have 20,400 as our resistance. If that breaks, we're looking for a bigger pump for 20,500. If we reject here, we're looking for a dip back down to 20,300. My gut tells me this is favoring upside for the 20,500 area, and we look a little bit more bullish. For the QQQ, if we lose 491.5, we're looking for a dip back down to fill this gap towards 490. As long as we hold above 493, we're looking for a bigger push for 494. So hold above 492.9, and we're looking for a pump. Lose 491.5, we're looking for a small dip first before it attempts to rebound. All right, so just like SPY, are we going to dip right down here to fill this gap and then get the big bounce? Or do we just push from here? Could go either way. I'm kind of favoring that it's going to try to push, but just to be safe, let's see what happens with the reaction to this data. That's going to determine what this is going to do. And either way, it does look like it wants to bounce, whether we dip first and then bounce, or if we just push from here, but that's going to likely be the case. Apple's a little bit weaker. We're not above 231.6. If we do reclaim that, we're looking for a push for 233. And if we fail to do that, we're looking for a dip back down to 229. So we might be tipping lower to 230, maybe a little bit lower before it attempts to rebound. So give this the time that it needs. As far as Netflix goes, we're dipping right here. We're looking to see if 750 holds. If 750 holds, we're going to be attempting to rebound for basically 758. And if we end up losing support, we're looking for a dip. So watch to see if this continues to push as the most likely case. As far as the IWM goes, the Russell 2000, we have this gap down here to fill. Do we end up losing 220 to dip back down towards 219 and then we bounce? Or do we push back up towards 221? As long as 220 holds on the IWM, we're going back up to 221.5. But if it doesn't hold and we get an initial dip, look for a dip and a bounce, okay? So it depends on the data. That's why I'm kind of indecisive right now. It depends on what kind of reaction we get. We still have that gap below to fill. So I'll be watching to see, do we dip and bounce or do we just push from here? I'll be very, very patient nonetheless. For coin, it's the same thing. If we hold above 206, we're looking for a pump for 210. If we lose 202, we could be dipping. It looks a little bit more bullish to me. So as long as we hold above 205, we do favor upside. Amazon, to me, looks like it might dip a little bit to fill the gap to 185, and then it might bounce back up to 187. Meta, same thing. Might dip a little bit to about 564 or so before it attempts to rebound. So it might be a small dip on Meta. For Microsoft, we're trying to hold support. We could attempt to push up a little bit later. Do we dip first to 424 and then bounce, or do we just push from here? We'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case. And the same thing could be said about Google. We have resistance at 165. Do we dip first and then bounce? I'll be watching that as well. But anyways, I'm going to basically conclude the video from here. I want to thank you all so much for listening. The market has gapped up as we predicted yesterday. I was saying there's going to be a push that's coming, and we got the push already thanks to Tesla. So the question is, do we continue to push, or do we see a little bit of a dip and a bounce? It depends on this data, so keep that in mind. Even if we do dip a little bit, we will bounce later on. So it could be a dip and a big bounce, or it could just be a push from here, depending on how things go. And so far, Tesla remains bullish. All right, so I'll see you guys soon in a couple of hours, and peace out.